Romeo and Juliet Act 1, Scene 3. This scene is interesting. The nurse, who is of a lower class, just like at the beginning, comes in and she's kind of rather vulgar, a little crude, and is the comic relief here in this conversation that happens between Lady Capulet and her daughter Juliet. So we're going to pick up in a room in Capulet's house. Lady Capulet comes in. Nurse, where's my daughter? Call her forth to me. Nurse, now by my maidenhead at 12 years old, she's swearing by her virginity she lost when she was 12, I bade her come. What lamb? What ladybird? God forbid. Ladybird is kind of a term for kind of a forward girl, and God forbid that Juliet's that way. Where's this girl? What Juliet? Juliet comes in. How now? Who calls? Your mother. Madam, I am here. What is your will? Lady Capulet, this is the matter. Nurse, give us leave a while. We must talk in secret. Nurse, come back again. I have remembered me. Thou'st hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughter is of a pretty age. So she's going to send away the nurse to have this private conversation with Juliet, but then she remembers the nurse has been there since Juliet was a baby, basically raising her as her governess, or nanny, if you will. And so she feels bad and calls her back in. Nurse, faith, I can tell her age unto an hour. Capulet, she's not 14. I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teeth be it spoken, I have but 4. She is not 14. How long is it now till Lammas died? So the nurse says she is basically 14, but almost. The mom didn't really say that she was that close to 14, that she was younger. It was the insinuation. But the nurse can't count up to 14 with her own teeth because she only has 4 left. A fortnight and odd days, so 20-something days until Lammas tide. And now the nurse is going to explain why Lammas tide is important. Even or odd of all days in the year, come Lammas Eve, at night she shall be 14. So she's almost 14. Susan and she, God rest all Christian souls, were of an age. Well, Susan is with God. She was too good for me. So she had a daughter at one time that is now has passed away. But Juliet was about her daughter's age growing up. But as I said, on Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. That shall she, Mary. I remember it well. 'Tis since the earthquake now 11 years, and she was weaned. Weaned means when you are no longer being breastfed. So she's, counting back to this earthquake, and Juliet was around, 2 years old at this point. I shall never forget it. Of all the days of the year upon that day, for I had then laid wormwood to my dug. She was a wet nurse for Juliet, because probably her daughter was the same age, so she nursed them both. And so she was trying to wean Juliet off of her breast, and so she put a bitter herb on her breast. So she's bringing up kind of, this situation in front of them at this point. Sitting in the sun under the dove house wall, my lord and you were then at Mantua, nay, I do bear a brain. So she remembers exactly where Juliet's parents were when this went down, when this situation happened. But as I said, when it is Juliet, when it did taste the wormwood on the nipple of my dug and felt it bitter, pretty fool, to see it touchy and fall out with the dug. So she tried to nurse and she spit out the breast. Shake, quoth the dove house, 'twas no need, I trow, to bid me trudge. So that's when the earthquake happened, and they got out of there to be safe. And since that time it is 11 years. For then she could stand alone, nay, by the rood, which is like she's swearing by some ornament or religious symbol. She could have run and waddled about. So she was already walking, so she knows she was at least 2 years old. For even the day before, she broke her brow. So right before this, Juliet had fallen down and had hurt her head. For even the day before, she broke her brow, and then my husband, God be with his soul, he was a merry man, took up the child. Yea, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face? Thou wilt fall backwards when thou hast more wit, wilt thou not, Jewel? And by my holidame, the pretty wretch left crying and said, Aye, to see now how a jest shall come about. So she's telling this story of when Juliet had just been a toddler and had fallen on her face and got a knot on her head, that her husband picked her up and said, yeah, you're going to fall on your face now, but when you're an older girl or a woman, you're going to fall backwards, meaning she's going to fall for a man in terms of intercourse. So kind of a tacky conversation here in the story would by no doubt cause Juliet some embarrassment. And she says, see, I see a jest shall come about. I see that joke is now true. I warrant, and should I live 1,000 years, I should never forget it. Wilt thou now, Jewel, quoth he, and pretty fool, it stinted and said, Aye, she told it again. Lady Capulet, enough of this, I pray thee, hold thy peace. Yes, madam, yet I cannot choose but laugh to think it should leave crying and say, Aye, and yet I warrant it had upon its brow a bump as big as a young cockerel stone, a perilous knock. It cried bitterly, Yea, quoth my husband, fallest upon thy face, thou wilt fall backwards when thou comest to age, wilt not, Jewel? It stinted and said, Aye. So she's probably cracking up when she's telling the story. She tells it 2 more times and says the knot on Juliet's head was about the size of a rooster's testicle. So again, just kind of crude and telling this story and cracking up about it over and over. Juliet finally speaks up. And stint thou too, I pray thee, nurse, say I. In other words, please stop embarrassing me. Peace, I have done. God mark thee to his grace. Thou wast the prettiest babe that I e'er nursed. And I might live to see thee married once. I have my wish. You were a beautiful child, and I'm so stoked to see you get married. Mary, that Mary is the very theme I came to talk of. Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? Juliet is an honor that I dream not of. So the mom's coming to talk to her about getting married. Remember, she's not even 14 yet. An honor, were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou hast sucked wisdom from thy teat. So she's really kind of insulting herself here, saying, you are right to say that marriage is an honor, and if I wasn't your nursemaid, I would think you've gotten that wisdom from me. Lady Capulet, well, think of marriage now, younger than you here in Verona, ladies of esteem, are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years that you are now a maid. Thus, then, in brief, the valiant Paris seeks you for his love. So she's kind of pushing Juliet to get married to this guy, saying that some women are already married and some are mothers, and that maybe she thinks she was already as well. The nurse. A man, young lady, such a man as all the world. Why, he's a man of wax, so he's good-looking enough to be kind of preserved in wax. Verona's summer hath not such a flower. Nay, he's a flower in faith, a very flower. He's good-looking. Lady Capulet says, what say you? Can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read over the volume of young Paris's face, and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every merry lineament, and see how one another lends content, and what obscured in this fair volume lies, find written in the margin of his eyes. So look him over, check him out. If you have any doubts, look him in the eyes and maybe see into his soul. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, this is talking about Paris, to beautify him only lacks a cover. So Juliet would be the cover to this beautiful book. The fish lives in the sea. In other words, the fish are surrounded by water. And 'tis much pride for fair without the fair within to hide. So you, as a good-looking girl, want a good-looking husband to be, hidden in you. That book in many's eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locks in the golden story. You will be his beautiful cover, and so shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less. So together you'll be more than you are separate. No less, nay bigger, women grow by men. Again, the nurse making a joke, because if Juliet gets married, she's going to get pregnant and grow bigger. Lady Capulet, speak briefly, can you like of Paris's love? I'll look to like, if looking liking move, but no more deep will I endart mine eye than your consent gives me strength to make it fly. It's an interesting comment here by Juliet, right? I'll look, and if looking makes me like him more, but I'm not going to go further than you give permission to, is what she says to her mother. Interesting that she, acts so obedient here when we kind of know a little bit about what's going to happen with her love interest with Romeo behind her mother's back. Enter a servant. Madam, the guests are come, supper served up. You called, my young lady asked for. The nurse cursed in the pantry. She must not be well liked. And everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you, follow straight. So the servants come to get them. We follow thee. Servant leaves. Juliet, the county stays. So he's here. Nurse, go, girl. Seek happy nights to happy days. So go check him out and see if there's love in the air. So that's what happens in this scene, and we'll move forward.